There are many finfluencers out there, many content creators out there, and there are very few who stand out. And today, at the Republic Media Network, in our headquarters, we've hosted the Republic Business Leadership Conclave. We had a very special guest. You would have seen him on Instagram, on YouTube. He's very, very popular. He's the one creating content, and we felt that we should get to know him a little better. Sarthak Ahuja. He's a business educator. He's also an investment banker, and he's joining us here on republicworld.com today. Thank you, Sarthak.
Thank you for having me. Very generous introduction. Thank you.
I hope you liked our campus.
Absolutely. I think it's beautiful, and the fact that it looks so much like a B school almost tells you it's a learning temple. It's a place where people can really come, and if they get to experience this campus, I mean, they'll just be inspired to join Republic, and I think that's possibly what you guys have been going for.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Do you think it's a good investment?
Okay. I don't know if you're asking from the perspective of finance or generally for business, but
Tricky question.
But to your question, I'd definitely say that one, if I think from a macro perspective, I think Greater Noida has given phenomenal returns in land as an asset over the past 4 years, where it's grown 6 times over the past 4 years. So it's been great where institutions have been able to buy land, of course. And I think when someone thinks of making an investment, right, and I especially think from the perspective of, say, younger people, and I would consider both of us to be young, I think there are several levers in finance, okay? So there's how much you earn as your income, then what's your expenses or cost, then comes the saving, and then comes the investment. And a lot of people tend to just optimize on the investment part, which is also a little disheartening for me, because I feel it's almost like they feel I can't change anything on my income part, that their entire focus in finance is essentially on optimizing investment, even though the highest ROI will just come from just being able to earn a lot more money. And if you think about it, it's about skills, right? And I feel the best investment anyone can really make in India today, where median age is like 29, is just upskilling and learning. It barely takes money. It just takes time and intent and curiosity, which there is so much of in India. And I know I'm kind of overstretching myself, but it pains me to see that the kind of videos that get the most amount of views on YouTube are actually JCB ki khudai. Did you know that?
Yes,
Yeah, and it's a little painful, because I would really hope people watch a lot more content that they could get skills, education, learning out of, and I think that's what our country really needs.
Yeah. So, I mean, anecdotal, I came across your content when, I needed some advice on maybe a business decision or maybe a financial planning situation, right? And I was often shown, hey, I think this may work, and look at Sarthak's videos. And it made a lot of sense to me. So from that perspective, I want to ask you, what if you had to give, because when I look at our employees, when I look at young Indians in the age group of 20 to, you said the median age was 29, to 20 to 35, right? Most of them are today in an EMI trap. They're struggling, right? Do you see that as a trend across?
100%. I mean, look at the data that Visa and MasterCard have been publishing, and it clearly shows that buy now, pay later, or the very fact that people can just buy things at a whim now, because that option of financing or consumer financing is available today. I think it's great from the perspective that India is a consumption-driven economy, so it boosts consumption. I'm just afraid to the extent that if it ends up becoming a habit, where a lot of these things end up becoming habits, it's just a very tough habit to break later on, because lifestyle inflation, when it kicks in, it's very, very difficult to go back to your old ways and be a lot more frugal, because you're just used to living in a particular way. So I think that is definitely a concern, but it's the market reality. And when I think from a business perspective, I would think, which is why most businesses today tend to focus on premiumization, on Gen Z, on enabling zero cost EMIs on their platform, because from a business perspective, it just makes sense, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, if you think about one lens of how does one come up with business ideas, I think every business is trying to optimize, can I cater to the 7 sins, the 7 cardinal sins in any way? And if you think of like a Zomato or a Blinkit, they're all catering to the sloth that we all like. We just want to be lazy. Correct. So it's both a good thing and a bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you tell the young generation, right? You want to call them Gen Z, you can, about, because I see them spending more than what they earn, and it is a dangerous trend with the job market, right? It's not really booming. Salaries aren't going up that much. What do you tell young people who are watching this?
I personally feel it's primarily driven by 2 factors. One may be lesser than the other. But a lot of the Gen Z cohort that I get to interact with also seem to come from parents where it seems like parents have at least one house that they feel they might get in inheritance. And the fact that a lot of them tend to believe that I don't necessarily need to do a job where I will be stationed in one city for the rest of my life, so I don't really need the financial commitment of saving for a house. And it's not just for India, I think it's globally, because real estate prices all over the world have just gone up so much that the consumer sentiment in a lot of markets has moved to saying that I don't think I'll ever be able to afford a house, so why should I even aim to do it? I might as well utilize my money in making my lifestyle better or buying myself joys. So would I say that's wrong? It's tough for me to say because I'm not in their shoes. But I think a bigger amplification of that thought process also happens because of social media and their media diet, when you're constantly consuming what a celebrity has in terms of a bag or where your friends are holidaying. And the very fact that I know people from tier 2 cities in India where there were 2 big concerts of 2 big stars that happened sometime last year, and these are college kids, and where tickets were selling for about 12,000 per concert. And these kids from a group, they got divided in 2 groups. One went for concert A, the other went for concert B. And there was a quid pro quo arrangement to say that we'll share all the pictures from our concerts with you so that you can also post it on your stories and make it seem like you've also been to the other place. So can you imagine, when so much of the spend is more about creating perception than genuinely finding joy and living an experience? That's where I think it becomes slightly problematic, because if you want to spend it because it gives you joy and you want that lived experience, which may someday add to your experience of the world and maybe add to some learning, in some way, I would still think it's great. But if that spend is just going towards wanting to put a story on social media, I think we really need to rethink the values or the psychological communication or message that's really going to the new generation. And maybe we need to start looking at fixing our media diets, quite like how we have a balanced diet for our body. I think it's really important to now look at how much time are you spending consuming what kind of media, and is it really beneficial, or are you just snacking on chips the entire day?
Yeah, media diet, I mean, fantastic term, but that's what the big tech houses want, right? They're feeding this huge, enormous diet, right, with content like that. So how do you change that? Can you change that?
I think change starts from within, right? It's almost like when you realize that I'm becoming unfit, or I'm getting obese, or I need to check my health because my health is my responsibility. It's fun to have ice creams and burgers and just go all out on amazing food. But I think most people get that realization when they reach a point in their lives when they realize, okay, I'm not really utilizing my time best, or I'm eating food that I'm not meant to consume, which mostly happens when they need to go to the doctor for something where things go out of control, right? So I would hope no one has to go through that to realize that they need to fix their media diet. But just humans are such that you can't really, I mean, equilibrium in markets finds itself. And you would hope that equilibrium will find itself where people will realize, okay, I really need to fix what I'm consuming because I need a better job, I need to be better upskilled. And I think equilibrium in the market will come in the form of AI, where someone feels that, okay, I am now not getting a job, then they would have no option but to fix their media diet and upskill to earn their livelihood. And I would hope that doesn't happen with people, but it will be the market reality. So what people like you and I and others can do is maybe just produce healthy media content for people to consume, and even if it has low takers, but if it gives us joy, we can hope that over the next decade or two, maybe there will be enough takers, and quite like there is a wave of protein intake in the market, someday people may want to consume intelligent content.
It's a subtle way of putting it, like good content that we are creating right now, right? Great. So how do you choose your content when you create content, and you create a lot of good content, right? So is there a pattern that you look at, or something that's trending, or do you just pick up subjects that you feel are of interest?
To be honest, I'm very selfish, because I realize that whatever follow account people see on a social media page. So for example, if today people see, okay, on his Instagram, he's got 2.5 million followers. They're not really my followers. They're actually followers of Instagram, because purely as someone who puts out content, I have no idea about, I don't have these people's phone numbers, their email IDs, their data. I don't have a personal relationship with any of them. And tomorrow, the platform can decide to bring my engagement down to zero, and I have no control over it. Which is why I've realized, for my mental health and for my own learning and development, my content engine primarily serves as L&D for myself and for my core team in business, because we do business consulting and investment banking. And what I choose to talk about is stuff that interests me. So someday I could be really interested in learning about finance, or another day I could just be interested about a little bit about geopolitics and what's happening and how will that impact maybe a client of mine, and I'm reading about that. And I just feel my service would be that whatever I've read, if I can express it in a way that people who've not had the privilege to get some bit of formal education that I have had, if they can understand, that is my level of wanting to give back and explain it to people and to the masses. So that's my little attempt. But at the end of the day, I'm selfish, because it's my daily L&D gym, and it keeps our team learning and it keeps me learning.
Yeah, great, fantastic. I have a couple of questions that will maybe help our viewers. Where should people between the age of 20 to 35, say in that age group, be putting their money? What are smart ways of saving/investing for that age group?
Yeah, I would say if you're between 20 to 35, most financial planning is essentially goal-based, where you think of for what time do you want to invest the money, when do you need it, and for what purpose. So, the answer could really differ for different people depending on their objective of saving up. But I would say if your time horizon is upwards of 10 years, because when you're younger, you don't have the pressure of immediate retirement, and you can possibly set aside some money for the next 10, 20 years. So if that is your horizon, I think the best bet is putting it in the market index. The reason I say that, I know I might antagonize a lot of financial planners, because the entire finance industry is built around trying to get an alpha and beat index returns, and that's how they make their money. But it reminds me of the time when Mr. Warren Buffett had actually thrown a challenge to the entire finance world, including hedge funds, mutual funds, PMSs, as you may call them, saying that over a 15-year period, I'm only going to invest in, say, the S&P 500, which is the index. And you can do all the possible active investing that you want to do in finance, and let's see after 15 years who beats the index. And all the funds who actually took on that challenge, by the time it hit year 12, everyone backed out, because they knew by the time it would be year 15, they would not be able to beat the returns of the S&P 500. So when you have a long-term horizon, and I personally myself invest primarily in in the index of our country, because I really do believe in the India growth story. I think all the macros are going in the direction of India growing over the next 2 decades. And I think rather than trying to find an opportunity, I spend that time just upskilling and learning, and just gives me a lot more joy. So I may miss out on 2-3% per annum, but I'm happily giving up on it.
Yeah. And do you see that as a pattern? Are more younger people investing in the markets, in mutual funds?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, the growth in the number of demat accounts since 2020 has just skyrocketed, and the fact that Grow and Zerodha and IND Money and so many of these apps have come about is just because of the Wang trifecta, how they say 3 things really bring a boost in the economy. The first is cheap data. The second is a swift payment infrastructure for digital payments. And the third is easy access to smartphones and internet devices. And I think all thanks to so many of these entities under the leadership of the government, where this has happened in India over the past decade and has just enabled this. And isn't that beautiful? I mean, if we on social media can educate people about finance and how to invest, and people can use this infrastructure to do it, I think on one hand, while they're taking EMIs, as long as on the other hand they keep doing this as a good habit, I think it's amazing.
Okay, so here's my last point, and it's anecdotal, because I still remember when I moved from Bangalore to Mumbai, for example. It's a case study. The old way of thinking was that you save your money, you put it in real estate, for example, right? So my father made sure that I had bought a house in Bangalore before I moved out, so that I was saving money, mandatorily every month, right? But that was because it was affordable back then. But increasingly what I've seen is that it's become unaffordable anywhere, at least in tier 1 cities, right? Mostly, real estate has become unaffordable. So what is happening is that younger Indians are unable to buy real estate. So there's a certain class that can afford it, and it's increasingly the upper middle class / the rich who can buy in real estate. Do you see that as a pattern?
Absolutely, and I think it's around the world, because it's almost like studying the Gini coefficient of different economies to see how the rich are getting richer, and the poor may be getting out of poverty but are not rising in financial health as well as the rich are. And I think it's the reality of any capitalistic society where, people would say that the first million is the hardest, and the next relatively gets easier. And I think that's the power of real estate, because when you think about it purely from an investment perspective, what really happens is you want a diversified portfolio. Today, real estate has gotten so expensive that, God forbid, you really even do collect the money and you put it in an asset, and God forbid it doesn't work or it doesn't take off. You've actually lost your life savings because you've not really built a portfolio. And the rich, what they're able to do is, because of more disposable income and not really even knowing where to put their money at, having so much, are like, okay, let's just build an entire land bank and a fully diversified real estate portfolio, which is why even if 20% of the portfolio gives nothing, the remaining 80% maybe has 60%, which is just about okay, and 20% gives you outsized return. And this fundamental rule of finance practically works in any asset class as it does in real estate as well. So I think it's going to be tougher for people to buy real estate, as it has been happening in China, it has happened in the US, it has happened in the UK, and practically every other economy which is following this path. And I think in India it's a great time to, if your affordability is lower, it's a great time to be living on rent, and it makes financial sense. And if you think you want to buy a house and it gives you some kind of psychological satisfaction, so be it, and do it, right? Because at the end of the day, I also think personal finance is very personal to everyone, depending on how they see their life, which is so shaped by their own experiences. So very difficult to give like absolute thumb rules that would apply to everyone.
Of course.
But I think it's a reality that the rich will continue to get richer. And those less fortunate will have to find ways to just upskill, because that will be their biggest lever to get out of their situation.
Yeah, but do you think property prices are going to? My last question: do you think property prices are going to fall? Do you think there's a balloon? There's this speculative, indexing of real estate that's happening across the country that may perhaps collapse at some point because it's unsustainable?
Yeah, so I'll give you a counterpoint which I don't really see a lot of times. I don't see it in reports. I don't see people talking about it, but I happen to be looking at the average number of people in a household across different countries. And you would notice that the global average is somewhere closer to 2.5, 3 at the moment. And in India, an average household has 4.7 members. So I would say, imagine India's population will grow at sub 1% per annum starting now. Urbanization will grow at just about 1% per annum starting now, which means the real lever in favor of real estate is the fact that your household size from 4.7 members is someday going to get to closer to 2.5 members, which is the global average outside of India, which is happening because of urbanization, jobs, nuclear families and whatnot. On that count, I still feel the inventory in the market is low and there is going to be continued demand in the future, which is why when I think from a decade or two perspective, I think real estate will continue to grow because a lot of inventory must come in the long term to serve this need. So rather than real estate prices going down, what may happen over a 4-year period is prices not growing as much, which when you look at a long time horizon, the CAGR or the return would kind of rationalize a bit. But would people who've bought at really high prices want to sell at a 20% discount? I think is highly unlikely. Because if the rich are driving a lot of the purchase in real estate, they may also have the holding power to keep holding it for a horizon and not sell it at a loss, even if not to pocket a larger gain. And I think that's something which might play out.
Fantastic. I mean, we can go on for hours, but thank you for taking the time out, Sarthak.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to speaking to you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.